The topic I chose to research and educate people about is global warming and its impact on the polar bear species. In this video, I will give a brief overview of the general effects of global warming. This includes both the known impacts and potential future impacts. I will then discuss how global warming is impacting sea ice and how these changes in sea ice are affecting polar bears. Finally, I will discuss the current status of polar bears as well as what the future holds for them. The average surface temperature of the globe has increased by over 1.6 degrees since 1906. Global warming has had many impacts on the environment over the years. These are a few of the known impacts. There is a melting of ice across the world, with even more melting at the poles. This melting of ice includes mountain glaciers, ice sheets that cover West Antarctica and Greenland, and Arctic sea ice. This melting of ice has contributed to rising sea levels, which are rising at a rate of 0.13 inches per year. These rising temperatures are affecting wildlife and their habitats, such as penguins in Antarctica. Other species, such as butterflies and foxes, are being forced to migrate to higher and cooler areas. Although there has been precipitation increases across the globe on average, many regions are experiencing severe droughts, which increase the risk of wildfires, lost crops, and drinking water shortages. Other species, on the other hand, are thriving due to global warming, such as mosquitoes, ticks, and crop pests. There are many known impacts that have already been observed. However, there are also future impacts that we may experience in the coming years. These are some of the potential future impacts of global warming on the environment. Sea levels are expected to rise 10 to 32 inches or more by the end of this century. We have already seen how hurricanes and other storms are becoming stronger. This trend will continue. Floods and droughts will also become more common occurrences. The melting of glaciers, which store nearly 3/4 of the world's fresh water, will cause less fresh water to be available. Diseases such as malaria will spread. Finally, ecosystems will be forced to change and species will need to move farther north. Other species, like polar bears, will not be able to adapt and may become extinct. As can be seen, global warming is having severe impacts on the environment, which in turn are affecting multiple different species. This includes polar bears. Global warming is causing changes in the patterns of sea ice distribution, structure, and freeze up. As the Arctic heats up quicker than other areas, the thickness and annual ice cover is shrinking in this area by about 14% a decade. Satellites have shown that there is 770,000 square miles less of sea ice than the median amount from 1981 to 2010. These changes and declines in sea ice are having major impacts on polar bears. Since sea ice is the polar bear's primary habitat on which they rely to hunt seals, the melting of sea ice is having huge effects on them. With the sea ice breaking up earlier than usual, polar bears are having less time to hunt seals. This has resulted in longer periods of fasting for the polar bears, lower body condition, decreased access to denning areas. They are producing fewer and smaller cubs, and there is a lower survival rate of cubs. Next, I will dive deeper into how sea ice decline is causing polar bears to starve. Studies have found that polar bears require even more to eat than previously thought. Their main source of food to maintain their diet is seals. In order to minimize their energy consumption, they use a method called still hunt. This method has polar bears waiting by the seal's breathing holes in the sea ice and attacking the seal when it surfaces to breathe. The breaking up of sea ice sooner and forming later forces them to use huge amounts of energy walking or swimming long distances to reach what remains of the ice. They may also have to stay on land longer, resulting in them fasting for longer and living off their stored fat from seals that they had caught in the spring. One study found that despite only being active 35% of the time, 9 female polar bears still burn through over 12,000 calories a day, many of which came from their body reserves. Another study has confirmed that polar bears aren't efficient walkers. However, they're able to roam large areas because of their high energy diet of seals. When they have to travel farther distances to be able to hunt, they lose even more weight. Eventually, they begin to lose muscle, which affects their ability to hunt successfully. So, although they can gain weight back fast, this is only when they are able to catch seals. Despite polar bears having the capability to swim long distances, this burns even more energy than walking. They are being forced to swim more to reach seal populations as ice melts. This increase in swimming could result in smaller bears, reduced reproduction rates, and increased risk of death. It's obvious that global warming is causing sea ice to melt, which has had major impacts on polar bears.
Stephen Anstrup, a chief scientist for Polar Bears International and former USGS polar bear specialist, published a study of his own in 2010. In his study, he projected that the continuing decline of sea ice could reduce the polar bear global population by 2/3. This means that there could be less than 10,000 polar bears in existence by 2050. Current estimates believe that there are 20,000 to 30,000 polar bears across the 19 polar bear populations. 4 of these 19 are considered to be declining. Currently, polar bears are considered endangered in the United States and are listed as vulnerable by the International Union for Conservation of Nature due to their sea ice habitat being under threat because of climate change. Based on the information I found during my research, I believe that the best way for us to help polar bears is by addressing climate change issues. It is clear that the main threat to their survival is the melting of sea ice, which is a result of global warming. As Stephen Anstrup said, the only solution for the long-term survival of the polar bear is to address climate change.